There have been two really disturbing developments with The Voice. That's Labor's racist plan to divide us by race by creating in the Constitution a kind of Aboriginal Parliament, an advisory one. And I think this is the start of apartheid. It's totally unacceptable, but Labor is trying to push this through in a referendum next year, early next year. You'll be voting on this without actually telling you exactly what it means and what this voice could do, what powers it would have. Now, the Liberals haven't yet had the courage to say no to this racist voice, but the Nationals have. And joining me is their leader, David Littleproud, who right now has probably other things on his mind, like the shooting of two policemen and a civilian on a property right next to his hometown. David Littleproud, thank you so much for joining me. These shootings, let's start with that. 6 people dead in one remote Queensland property in the Darling Downs. That's in your electorate. This must be so devastating.
Yeah, this is actually my hometown. I grew up in Chinchilla. This isn't what Chinchilla or Tara is. We're law-abiding citizens, we're God-fearing people. We just live simple lives doing the right thing. And for this to happen, not only in Australia, but to happen in these communities is something that I think has just traumatised the community. We're numb. We're trying to process it, to understand the why of this. And I think the malicious intent of the actual actions of these people goes to the very heart of what's rocked the community. We just don't see that in our towns, and you've got to appreciate that once you become a country copper and you go out into these regional and rural communities, you become part of that community. You're intrinsically tied to it. And while they're protective of us, the police, we're protective of them, because we know when things get tough, the police are the ones, and emergency service for that matter, are the ones that stand with us. So this is particularly traumatic because those young men and women, those 2 young men and women that have lost their lives mean a lot to us. And obviously to their families, our heart just pours out to them. And it's going to take a lot of healing. We're just going to put our arms around their family, but also to the police family that are left in Tara and Chinchilla. This is a traumatic experience, and one in which I hope we never experience again, not only in Chinchilla but anywhere else in the country.
And like I said earlier in the show, the best of us being killed by the worst of us. It's just, the mind boggles. You're right. You can't get anything, almost learn anything from that. But David Littleproud, if we can, I'd like to turn to some politics of the day. I know that's a very awkward segue, and ask you about something else that's popped up. 2 things about Labor's plan for The Voice, a kind of Aboriginal-only parliament in our Constitution. Labor's working group on The Voice now says the Albanese government won't show us how it will actually work until we vote on it early next year. It's not going to introduce the actual legislation for this body until after the referendum. Your response?
Oh, look, we knew that, and while many commentators have denigrated the National Party for our position, is that we got to a position because we understood where the government's position was. They were predicating this off the broad architecture of the codesign report, that it was going to be a representative body. We've been down a representative body before under the old ATSIC model. Now, the report says 25 to 27 regions. I think, from what I understand, is it'll probably be close to where our ATSIC model was of 34 to 35 and a couple from each of that. Now, while that might work in metro regions, I can tell you in regional remote areas, the vast distance between these communities means that the unique challenges and solutions are different from one community to the next, and they can be hundreds of kilometres away. And this shouldn't be about adding another layer of bureaucracy. This should actually be about shifting the dial of saying, we're not going to send people to Canberra, we're going to send Canberra to the Whatever's of the world, to the Alice Springs of the world, to the Cunnamullas of the world. And you don't leave until you come up with a tailored solution. We should flip this on its head and say closing the gap should be what this should be all about. And we should have an ambitious goal. We should say, as a nation, let's close the gap, particularly in where the problems are in regional, rural and remote areas. Close it by 2030 to 35. Not enshrine something in the Constitution that says effectively it's going to be there forever. we should, as the Constitution says, that under that Constitution, every Australian is treated equally.
What concerns me is that Labor is trying to sneak this through without anyone knowing exactly what it is. I mean, on top of the fact that it won't reveal the legislation until after we vote for the voice, it's not going to fund a no case. It's not going to send out pamphlets outlining the no case to voters. It's given tax exemption status to a group pushing the yes case, but still not one pushing the no one. And now the Australian Electoral Commission is running a big drive to sign up lots more Aboriginal voters. In particular, this is appointed Aboriginal voters, not of all races, in time for the referendum on the voice, saying this is a month-long advertising and communication campaign aimed at empowering First Nations Australians to enrol and vote. And note the term First Nations Australian, by the way, that's a political term, falsely implying they already had nations. Listen, the whole thing seems to me the government using the bureaucracy, using every tool at its disposal to get a political outcome rather than involve and inform Australians about what's at stake.
Oh, look, and this has been our concern. We want practical, pragmatic measures that'll actually shift the dial. And that comes with genuine intent. And unfortunately, you know, we got the clear message from the government that they were basing it off the codesign report, and the details about who will be elected, how they'll be elected, and a lot of those details weren't going to come until after it. So we didn't jump the gun. We knew exactly what was coming, and that's why we made a very difficult decision, but one that through our party room we were able to get to a consensus. And you've got to understand that while there was one member that didn't agree, that's always the case in the National Party. We actually respect diversity, but we respect those that have lived experience through this, like Jacinta Price, and those that represent these communities. And let me tell you, and this is where...
Look, I actually agree. I agree with you. I thought the criticism of you has been totally off the dial, that the details all out there. Now we're being told, with the government's own advisory body here, that the detail is going to be withheld. We actually have it from them. So honestly, you have to be against it. If they won't tell you what it is, probably for a reason. David Littleproud, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.